So welcome everyone to the first NZBCA webinar of the year. Last year we successfully hosted a dozen webinars, which we were pretty proud of. We started off by running them every 2 weeks. We quickly got into more of a monthly rhythm. And the purpose of the webinars is really it's a key opportunity for our members to discuss their work, share their insights. So if you are a member and would like to present, you are very welcome to do so. We are currently looking for presenters for the second half of 2026 because we've got most of the early part of the year in play. So we'll record the session. That's available for you to use as you wish with your teams or part of your own marketing. And yeah, quickly before I start, I didn't present a webinar last year, so I thought I'd probably best step up this year. I wanted to do something that links with the trends and events of last year and the potential developments as we go forward. So a nice light topic, the future of consulting. The goal, I think, for this session is just to explore, is to bring out some particular trends we see and explore how they might develop. So it's mostly a webinar on my personal reflections, something light, not too polished, observational rather than data-driven. 30 minutes for the presentation and time for discussion at the end. And these are the 5 core themes to cover today. So we're going to look at artificial intelligence, specifically focusing on the intersection of AI and how it affects consulting. Secondly, I want to talk about issues of ethics and trust. So that involves talking about some of the events that have affected the larger end of town. And potentially examining the opportunities they present for the smaller independents. I want to talk about the concept of visible authority, if you've not heard about that one before. And I also want to talk about ecosystem thinking, which is very much an underlying principle of the NZBCA, but it's certainly grabbing attention as a strategy for boutiques across the world. And then finally, and this is where there is a bit of a change to what I originally planned to cover, instead of positioning an offer, I want to talk about people and skills. So a few reflections on consultants themselves and the skills that are necessary in order to take into account the impact of the previous 4 themes. So it all kind of links together in that way. Plenty of other things I could have talked about. Reasons of time primarily, but also reasons of expertise. So I've kept away from anything to do with trying to predict the market or the economy, because everything I've ever said there has been a guess and usually turns out to be wrong. So one final note before we start. So obviously it's our goal at the NZBCA to help you respond to and meet the trends and the challenges. So along the way, I'll mention any resources or initiatives that are in play to help you do this. So let's begin. So starting today with what has been the biggest theme really of the last 3 years and likely to remain so for the next, artificial intelligence. So I can't possibly do justice to this topic in roughly the 5 minutes I've allocated, but let me headline the key takeaways from the past year, at least for me, as to what extent AI is beginning to impact consultants and consultancies. So firstly, despite the predicted Armageddon for jobs, the bigger consultancies are reducing a number of roles, but it doesn't yet seem that agentic AI has made the same kind of impact across the boutique sector as we thought. So there's lots of people who are waiting to see how things will shake out. And I think where things really are at the moment is that some cutting-edge firms are embedding AI into their consultancy work, but that's not particularly normal. So if you aren't using it, you're not really behind, and it's not too late to start yet, I think. Secondly, I think this gap exists partly because the initial usage of AI has really unlocked some quite significant issues, especially for consultancies that especially for consultancies, I think. And that challenge is how much we can trust AI at the moment. So the first challenge is hallucinations. And these are effectively where AI makes things up. And I've seen some terrible examples of this in my own work. They're particularly difficult to manage because of how plausible and how well written that incorrect information sounds when it's generated by AI. Secondly, and you must have seen this yourself, AI writing often contains huge amounts of redundancy, repetition, cliche, and even if you try to impose a house style, it tends to be quite unreliable. So dealing with those two issues often means that more time is ultimately spent correcting the output in the first place than perhaps you even saved initially. So there is also the potential effect that AI is having on the human skills that we've got. A little bit unproven this, but I personally find that my critical thinking, my analysis skills are not as effective or as quick as they used to be. And perhaps this is the same level of concern that we currently have around social media affecting our attention spans. So given that consultancies rely on the skills and the knowledge and the intellectual capability of their individuals, that's quite a threat. So nonetheless, AI is affecting the people within firms. In particular, what we call the pyramid structure is being affected. And I'll cover people a bit more in the people section at the end. So how will it evolve this year? Well, I think there'll be a more focused use of AI. So, for example, rather than asking AI to create an entire piece of content, we move to something which is more granular. So, for example, you might generate additional ideas to your already generated content, or perhaps, and it's quite good at this, creating a flowing script from your notes, or simply to provide a final proof check. It's all very good at those granular activities. And secondly, I do see that leaders and seniors within firms are going to have to make some serious moves to adapt. I think the waiting is probably over. So learning, getting comfortable with both the technology and adapting their delivery methods and the wider company delivery methods to use AI, accepting that things have changed. So what do I suggest the responses to this should be? So number one, now is the time to get off the fence and start experimenting. You aren't behind at the moment, but at some point, I think you will be, either behind your competitors or where your clients expect you to be. I think you'll very quickly need to put in some AI quality check processes. So not just verifying the details that AI has generated, but also replicating the task, because generative AI rarely produces the same result. And then if you do have a team, as many of you do, you're going to need to instruct your team on how they should be using AI. So what the limits of acceptable use are, where the human in the loop needs to be. So we're looking to provide support, and the support we're providing this year will be in the form of a guide and hopefully some related training. The guide that we're going to produce will be hopefully in this first half of the year, and it's going to lean into this very discrete and focused use of AI, so specific tasks that AI is very useful for consultancies. So if I move on to the second theme, ethics, and there is a degree of overlap, I think, between this theme and the impact of AI. So hopefully that will become clear. In 2025, we certainly saw a number of high-profile events that affected the larger end of town, but the impact of these events has trickled down across the industry. So the PwC Australia tax scandal is still ongoing. We're still finding information. For those of you who don't know it, it involved PwC partners advising the government on anti-avoidance tax laws, whilst other partners were simultaneously advising clients on how to circumvent those very same laws. Not to be outdone, in 2025, Deloitte Australia produced a very large report valued at $500,000 that relied heavily on generative AI. And that report contained at least 20 serious errors, including fabricated references. And those are just two of examples from our side of the world, though I do know not New Zealand. So I think the tolerance for AI mistakes in our clients is very low, and the tolerance for purposeful ethical breaches is probably even lower. So looking ahead, I do actually expect the big consultancies to respond to this, to start making some more ethical decisions. And just in the last week, Ernst & Young has ended a contract with ICE in the USA, and Google employees themselves have petitioned for Google to end their contracts with them as well. But I think, inevitably new historical examples will continue to come up. So this environment does provide a significant opportunity for boutique consultancy leaders. There's a chance to differentiate the practice. But to do that, I think you need a clear position, a clear ethical position. So at the same time, it's likely that client expectations will increase, that you will have a formal ethical policy or strategy. And there's also a developing expectation that's related to this. It's not ethical to charge the same amount for a project if you are doing substantially less work due to AI automation. And now this is quite a potentially disruptive and certainly complex issue, because the value of specialists like we have here is the experience you've built up over years and years. And AI really has no bearing on that at all. On the other hand, it does have the potential to speed things up and therefore reduce costs. So I think it presents both opportunity and risk. Opportunity in that flexible, agile boutiques are in a much better position to come up with new ways of working, new commercial offerings, and risk in that pressure to reduce fees can actually be quite an existential threat to boutiques who are already hand to mouth in this current economy. So I have two things, excuse me, two things to recommend. Just take a quick drink. Two things to recommend. Firstly, establish an ethical framework and an ethical policy for your company. So as a reminder, we do have those established resources already available. So we've got an NZBCA ethics framework. And I also recommend looking at the BCS, British Computer Society Ethical Decision Making Framework. Those are really good starting points. And you need to specifically establish a position around ethical AI use, I think, within those. But you also need to look at your position on fees where AI has been used. So get a clear position on it now. Don't wait until you are challenged by a client. So yes, I can help you. I can point you towards the ethical frameworks, and that's some of the support that we can provide. You can use those or adapt. You're free to use them or adapt them as you see fit. So third theme, the visible authority. Now, if you spend much time on LinkedIn, which most people do, you may follow either Luke Smeyers, who's in Belgium, or Professor Joe O'Mahony in the UK. And if you don't follow them, I suggest you do. They've both been very vocal in discussing the concept of the visible authority and its importance, especially for boutique consultancies. So becoming a visible authority means being recognized by your target audience as a genuine expert in your field. Because, and certainly Luke Smeyers has provided some great evidence of this, research consistently shows that clients increasingly favor firms with deep, specific expertise rather than broad positioning. So smart people solving problems, smart people solving difficult problems is not what people are looking for. It's not sufficient. So achieving this requires two elements. First, it means you've got to have a defined field, meaning you need a specialism or a niche. And second, you've got to have a deliberate strategy of creating content and probably leaning heavily on digital channels for distribution. So I don't think the underlying behaviors of visible authority are particularly new, but the concept gathered quite a lot of momentum in 24 and 25, I think. And I do think it's actually quite a useful encapsulation, that term, visible authority. So going into 26, I think there are two important things that are already happening and likely to happen more. So firstly, there will be a move from visibility to citable authority is the term. So if 2025, the goal was to be seen, the focus is now shifted to being citable. Right, I'm not a big authority on this one, but one of our colleagues and advisors, Doug Johnston, is. And this is very much tied in with answer engine optimization, AEO. where buyers are increasingly using AI to shortlist their consultants. They do a lot of that work before they even contact you. So visibility now becomes less important than being the source that the AI cites. So you have to now look to structure your content in a way that AI models can interpret and use. And then on the other side of this, we've got something called the human premium. And because the market is being flooded by average AI content, AI slop, there is already a desire for more human-generated content. And if you're producing polite or generic AI-written blogs, there really is a risk of that, A, being ignored by the AI itself, but B, just being relegated in terms of people's mindset. So those two things, interestingly, one is a threat from AI and one is a risk of using AI. So a couple of things to balance there. What should the focus be in 2026? Well, certainly if you haven't already started your content journey, the time to start is now, beginning of the year. So begin to lead your marketing with articles which show expertise, specialism, and quality. Making sure that you always lead with the client in mind, not your services. So I mentioned Joe Omani earlier. He's recently written a paper in which he proposes a 4-stage framework for this journey. So it goes defining your niche and your audience, developing the content, distributing the content, and finally sustaining visibility. And we'll provide the link to his work for you in the chat. It's a very simple but very effective framework. So you need to adapt your content to be AI friendly, but use AI very carefully in creating the actual content. So in terms of support, what can we do? Well, we have got a new upcoming guide, hopefully to be released in the next 2 months, called the Consultant Builders Playbook. That's got plenty of frameworks and suggestions about how you might structure this process. And of course, you can avail yourself of one of our advisors, because we have experts both in digital positioning and marketing, amongst many others as well. Ecosystem thinking, fourth topic. So the ecosystem is a core underlying principle of the NZBCA, and we are seeing it gain significant attention internationally, though, as a viable business strategy for boutiques across many markets. And I haven't yet nailed a perfect definition of what I think ecosystem thinking is, but it's certainly more than just working together. So the definition I have at the moment is ecosystem thinking is achieving your strategic objectives, including scaling and delivery, through collaborating with partner organizations rather than attempting to cover all areas internally. A little bit wordy perhaps, but I think you get the gist. So it requires work to find the right partner, to build the relationship. I think it requires a give to get mindset. It requires mechanisms, contract rules, and so on. But I think most importantly, trust. As such, ecosystems like the NZBCA take time to develop, just like relationships with clients take time to develop. A couple of examples of how this is manifesting across the world. You may have heard of expert networks, and these are organizations which connect clients with very experienced people, former executive, policymakers, industry veterans, for very short duration, high impact interactions, possibly an hour or two. And then there are also a number of global alliances developing. Umbrex is one for individual consultants. And I've recently found out about Cordons Worldwide that connects boutiques across the world. So as well as the NZBCA type organizations, there are others as well. So I think ecosystem thinking is particularly important and powerful for independent consultancies because it allows you to achieve several objectives at once. It allows you to maintain focus and keep working within your own core expertise. It enables you to scale your operations with significantly less risk. It allows you to bring in additional capacity and capability at short notice. And it allows a differentiated, less conflicted approach compared to the large-scale partnerships, which are the alternative. Looking ahead to next year, I think the opportunity for ecosystem thinking is clearly growing, and I like to think the NZBCA is at the heart of this. My predictions are therefore broadly in line with what we plan to do. Certainly more joint bids and increased collective intelligence. Okay, and undoubtedly already beginning to happen. We're beginning to plan for shared operating systems and shared infrastructures for ecosystems. So things like rules of engagement, contracts, shared tool usage, maybe even with strict privacy, sharing CRM data. So elements like that. And then finally, I do expect to see the beginning of some joint marketing, where companies start to publish the collective capability of their ecosystem. Imagine the strength of 50 companies all communicating the same unified message to the market. It's a very strong, powerful idea. So yeah, look, let me just give you a quick example from my time in Wellington last week. I'm now aware of a 3-party joint bid that's just commenced. And that bid is actively being supported by other ecosystem partners, in this case, a specific RFI tool vendor. So how can you respond to this? Oh, let's have a look. So firstly, we've soft launched the NZBCA marketplace, which is where you can put your company details on. And secondly, we've created a cheat sheet for ecosystem working. And again, we'll give you that in the links at the end of the material. So ecosystem, yes. And now onto the final section, people and skills. So I'd originally planned to talk about value proposition and defining your offer, but I happened to attend a webinar last week where an organization, well, 2 organizations, one called Honeycomb, one called New Minds, who are both UK consultancies. They work for other consultancies, and they delivered their consulting people report in 2026. And I actually thought it was very good, so I decided to pivot to that. We'll provide the link to that video. So all necessary credit to Honeycomb and New Minds within this section, even though it does have some of my own thoughts on top. And what they were saying is that currently they see 4 specific trends shaping the workplace within consultancies. And we're talking about consultancy as a whole, not just particularly boutique consultancies. So the first is reduced junior demand. And the big firms have slowed down entry-level hiring. So that's because automation, they believe, now handles many of those basic tasks, meaning that the traditional heavy lift at the bottom of the team isn't as necessary as it was before. This does leave leaders to the challenge of how we're going to keep seniors in the future if there are no juniors to replace them. Of course, that's I certainly don't have any particular answers to that. That again is a very complex issue. Reduced juniors, therefore, does lead to changes in the typical structure of a consultancy. So the classic, what called the consulting pyramid, where you've got many juniors supporting a few seniors, is certainly breaking down. Instead, the middle of the structure is now doing more of the heavy lifting. In addition, work is less and less tied to a single location due to hybrid working, and also a degree of regionalization that seems to be happening. So this is where teams are distributed across region because for reasons of cost and expertise. So that fundamentally changes how to approach management, supervision, and culture as well. So all of those themes need to be reappraised in the light of that. And finally, because AI can produce technical drafts very quickly, there is already developing a counter pressure, and clients are placing quite a high premium now on those human skills, whether that includes conflict resolution, analysis, synthesis, and as I said earlier, critical thinking. How will this shape up through 2026 and the future? Well, I think now is the time that leaders and seniors will need to step up, especially in relation to how AI is being used. So leaders are going to have to learn how to check work that the AI helps create and set prices on the value it delivers, not the hours it worked, and of course to take full responsibility for the results that are presented to clients. So seniors need to be able to explain or stand behind what AI produces. Secondly, consultants will continue to change shape, moving from a pyramid shape, I think, where teams of juniors are prevalent. Instead, they probably want, and we've seen this certainly with our clients in New Zealand probably earlier, they want direct access to experienced people. So this means there'll be a shift from a pyramid shape to what is called a diamond shape. So fewer juniors, more experienced staff in the middle and at the top. Boutiques already do this, so this is something that we need to lean into. Human skills will matter more and more. The AI enhanced consultant, I think, of the future has both AI skills and soft skills. And junior roles will change. Junior jobs, I don't think, will go away. They may well reduce, but they will be different. I think juniors won't do basic analysis so much. They'll manage the AI that does it. They'll learn to check, repeat, and judge the AI's work. They'll still learn by doing, but doing is about checking, I think, not creating from scratch. There's still absolutely the need for a full understanding of the process of consulting and the process of artifact creation, and that won't disappear. What should your responses be? Well, I think you need to first define what you believe is your AI enhanced consultant, whether that's you yourself or your team. What is the combination of technical, soft skills, and AI skills that you feel you need? And secondly, you should look to find ways of ensuring that your junior and senior team members need to work together. And you need to encourage a two-way learning model. Let me park that just for a second, because I'll come back to that. So how can we support? Well, firstly, take advantage of our advisors, especially those in the people space. And then you may want to show your team the training we have on the knowledge base on what we're calling the Boutique Academy. And that's available for you, and it's available already, and it's available for your team. Now, back to the two-way learning model. And again, credit to Honeycomb and New Minds for this diagram. I've taken this from their presentation. And what this simple diagram is saying is that we have to encourage a senior team, not just to pass knowledge on to the junior teams, but actually to actively learn from them, to learn about AI, learn about tech, and learn about how the juniors see the world. That means you need seniors with a curiosity and a willingness to learn and a willingness to change the way that they are doing things. So if the senior team are curious and they're asking questions and they really want to learn what's going on, the juniors then feel empowered, they're willing to share more and learn more, and so the virtuous cycle continues. So I thought that was a very good, powerful, but quick model I thought I'd like to present to you. So let me finish up with a recap of the potential responses and recommendations for you as we've gone through, so that you can deal with the risks and take those opportunities presented by the rapid changes that we are seeing in the industry. So get off the fence and start experimenting when it comes to AI. You're not behind at the moment, but at some point you will be. Put processes in for quality check, not just the verification of the details, but replication of the task. And if you've got a team, give them instructions on how to use AI, what the limits of acceptable use are, and where you need the human in the loop to be. With regards to ethics, get an ethical policy or ethical framework, and the NZBCA ethical framework is available on the website for you. And create a position on ethical fees when you are using AI, and do this before you're challenged by the client. You'll need to lead your marketing on expertise, specialism, quality, and with the client in mind. And you need to adapt your content to be AI friendly, but at the same time, use AI very carefully when you're creating the actual content. Always be on the lookout for joint opportunities. And that's how you can add to the ecosystem. The more everyone comes to the party on this, the more everyone will benefit. Define your AI enhanced consultant, decide on your definition of what it looks like and that combination of AI, soft and technical skills. And finally, find ways to encourage your junior and your senior folks to work together so that they both benefit from each other's knowledge and each other's experience. So thank you for listening. About 30 seconds, we'll open up for discussion, but one more thing. These are the types of topics we're looking to discuss in the Leaders Circle. And the Leaders Circle is one of the new initiatives from the NZBCA for this year. It's a monthly forum for those with more established teams to discuss and share information, and there are a couple of spaces left on this. Planning to begin the sessions in March. So if you're a member and you have a team and you've got an established scaled consultancy, or you are scaling and you want to discuss it, then this could be for you. Thank you. We can open for questions or discussion.